My name is Tarr, and I'm going to talk to you about sign language. According to the American Sign Language Club, 93% of deaf children are born into hearing families. 72% of families with children who sign do not use sign language with their children. Can you imagine what it would be like to not be able to communicate with your own family? These saddening statistics are why sign language is so important to not only deaf culture, but hearing culture as well. Many people assume that deaf people struggle with communication because their language isn't verbal. That isn't the case. Sign language is, in fact, a language, just like English or Spanish. The only difference is the means of delivery. Sign language is very important, yet overlooked and underappreciated language that provides deaf people and many others with pride, identity, and opportunity. Today I will discuss with you about the history of sign language and its benefits. Let's begin by first understanding the origin of sign. Aristotle, famous philosopher, claimed that a person could only learn through hearing a spoken language. This was a common belief for many years, and because of this belief, deaf people were considered unable to learn. Things even went so far that the law denied them of their rights and had them labeled as non-persons. So, as if being born without hearing wasn't enough, the law then had you labeled as not only a non-person, but unable to learn as well. As the time passed, research continued. Eventually, religious leaders and scholars found that learning doesn't in fact require a spoken language. Because, as it turns out, the ear's disability to hear doesn't affect the brain's ability to learn. These findings led the priests, monks, and scholars to develop and teach an early form of sign language. Soon after the development of early sign, people theorized that if the deaf were taught sign, they would never learn a spoken language. They also claimed that without a spoken language, you couldn't function as a member of society. However, despite these common beliefs, sign language continued to grow and develop. After sign language became a more commonplace, the oral method came into play. This method was just a recurrence of the previous idea that without a spoken language, one couldn't be a functioning member of society. During this time, teaching and learning sign was discouraged. It was pushed to have deaf children enrolled into hearing schools where they would take speech therapy and learn how to verbally communicate. In these hearing schools, the deaf struggled as they were expected to read lips, with little to no extra accommodations to help them keep up with this fast pace. Again, however, despite the controversial beliefs, sign language continued. And throughout all of these trials, the deaf persevered and fought for their rights and their language. Let's take a look at how this hard-earned language benefits people today. Sign language gives a voice to those who might have difficulties communicating otherwise. With speaking, learning, hearing, and other disabilities, verbal communication can be a challenge. Sign language provides a means of communication that isn't verbal. It's basic human nature to want to communicate. So when you're unable to express yourselves with words, it's common for behavioral issues to arise. Learning sign language has been proven to help with behavioral problems linked to communication in both deaf and hearing children. Contrary to previous beliefs, sign language is important to the education of deaf and hard of hearing students. Sign language allows for information to be presented in a way that all students are able to understand and follow. With verbal teachings, deaf and hard of hearing students would be expected to read lips. That's not only tiring, but it becomes very easy to miss information or misunderstand. Sign language doesn't just benefit the deaf and hard of hearing communities. It's been proven that children who learn sign at an early age have higher IQs. People who know sign also tend to have more confidence and less issues with self-esteem. In conclusion, sign language is an important aspect in deaf culture and hearing culture as well. It provides a voice to those with verbal communication difficulties. It also has been proven to help children, hearing or deaf, develop into the best they can be. The road to getting this language was filled with roadblocks and obstacles, but now the benefits of sign language can be reaped, no matter who you are. By educating yourself about other languages and cultures, you can learn that what we perceive as a disability might really be an advantage. Just open your eyes and listen.